On the day Andrew was officially welcomed as a full member of the Carter family, I went to offer my congratulations, just like I had in my past life. This time, however, I brought 6 bodyguards with me. His whole family greeted me warmly, acting as if I were their most beloved daughter. "This is Emily Lynn, the heir of the Lynn Corporation," his father, Mr. Carter, said with a beaming smile. His mother quickly added, "And she's also going to be the future daughter-in-law of our family." Even his sister-in-law, Joanna, gave me a sweet smile, saying how happy they all were to see me. Felt hauntingly familiar. In my previous life they had treated me exactly the same way, showering me with sweet words that masked clever traps. They made me believe Andrew's distance was just because he was introverted and overly sensitive. I thought his coldness stemmed from pride, and I was determined to win him over, even enduring scolding from my own family elders. I spared no effort, using every resource I had to help him succeed. Andrew never refused my help. But years later, when my family faced a major crisis, not only did he refuse to help us, but he also sided with our competitors to destroy us. I will never forget the day he came to take over my family's company. My father, barely holding on, signed all the paperwork and suffered a fatal heart attack in the elevator on his way out. As I held his lifeless body in despair, the elevator doors opened to reveal Andrew, impeccably dressed. He looked down at me coldly and said, "Miss Emily, your support has fallen. Now, do you want to be my wife or a ruined woman? The choice is yours." That moment felt like a bolt of lightning striking me. I couldn't believe this ruthless man was the same boy who had once shown me vulnerability. He retaliated for my rejection by pressuring my creditors to harass me until I had no peace left, forcing me to beg him for mercy. We were married for 8 years. During that time, Andrew never touched me, no matter how hard I tried to care for the household or prove my worth. One room in our house was dedicated entirely to a shrine for his first love, Sarah. Every morning at exactly 7 a.m., he insisted I light incense for her. Afterwards, he would stay in the room alone. I secretly eavesdropped a few times and heard him whisper things like, "Sarah, he deserves to grovel like a dog. If only you were still alive, we wouldn't have to torment each other like this. We would have been the happiest couple." I never understood what I had done wrong. Every time I tried to find the truth, his entire family would unite against me, accusing me of being a villain, blaming me for Sarah's death, and calling me an unrepentant sinner. But I genuinely didn't know what happened. On the day Sarah jumped into the sea, I was busy organizing Andrew's birthday party. I didn't even see the message she'd sent me wishing me happiness until after the party ended. That was the first and only time she had contacted me directly. Yet, after her death, that message became the supposed evidence of my guilt. On our 8th wedding anniversary, Andrew asked me to drive him and Sarah's memorial tablet to a remote temple for a blessing. We had a car accident on the mountain road. I was trapped in the driver's seat, unable to move or call for help. Andrew, sitting in the back, wasn't seriously injured, but he deliberately delayed rescuing me. He stood there and watched as the car caught fire. Moments before the explosion, I screamed at him, asking what Sarah's death had to do with me. He looked at me coldly and said, "In your next life, be a better person." But there is no next life. Today is the 2nd day since I've been reborn. My gaze swept past all the charming faces in the room and landed on Andrew, who was hiding at the back, pretending to be aloof. Hatred surged through me, and the pain of my past life washed over me again. "Andrew, congratulations," I said with a sharp smile. "You've officially been recognized. The Carter family has finally accepted their illegitimate son." The atmosphere froze. His cunning father had only managed to secure his place in the Carter family by using me as leverage, claiming that Andrew and I had been college classmates and that I had pursued him passionately. That was the only reason he had the courage to confront his wife and force a reconciliation. Andrew's face turned crimson with embarrassment, his usually elegant features twisting as the color deepened. The lively atmosphere disappeared, and the room fell into an eerie silence. Mrs. Carter gave Joanna a subtle glance. Joanna immediately lowered her voice and asked, "Emily, did you and my brother have a fight?" I pulled my hand away from her grasp. In my previous life before I married Andrew, I had always thought Joanna was a kind and simple girl. She didn't show hostility toward the sudden appearance of a half-brother. Instead, she seemed eager to get along with him. But later, I realized she was a master manipulator, even better at scheming than her mother. On the surface, she wished for me and Andrew to be happy together, but behind the scenes, she feared that with my family's support, Andrew would secure the inheritance rights to the company. She constantly schemed against us. After my family collapsed, she was the first person to kick me while I was down. Even after Andrew and I got married, she was the most frequent visitor to our home, always looking for ways to sow discord. "Don't call me sister-in-law. You can't afford to ruin my reputation," I said, brushing past Joanna and walking straight toward Andrew. He stood tall, more than a head higher than me, with deep, unreadable eyes and lashes so thick they cast shadows on his face. He always had that brooding look, as if hiding secrets too heavy for anyone to uncover. "They all say I'm your girlfriend," I said, tilting my head slightly. "I'm a little busy, so tell me, am I?" In my previous life at this point, Andrew always kept our relationship ambiguous. He neither accepted nor rejected me outright. It wasn't until I handed him a $30 million project to secure his foothold in the city that he finally admitted I was his girlfriend. Andrew glanced sideways, looking left and right, as if searching for something or someone. Then, with a faint, almost indifferent tone, he countered, "What do you think?" I understood immediately. Someone else in this room cared about his answer more than I did. Was it Sarah? I didn't see her anywhere, perhaps hiding in some corner. "So, is it a yes or no?" Pressed, my voice sharp. Joanna rushed over, laughing awkwardly to diffuse the tension. "Oh, Andrew, don't be so shy. Emily wants to hear you say it loud and clear. Come on, don't be like a block of wood." Mrs. Carter, Andrew's stepmother, also joined in with a smile, encouraging him to answer. After a long silence, Andrew finally spoke. His gaze met mine, and there was a flicker of resentment in his eyes. "Yes, you're my girlfriend." I clapped my hands together with mock surprise. "Oh my! I knew there was a misunderstanding. I don't like you, and I never wanted to be your girlfriend." The entire Carter family turned to look at me, their expressions synchronized with confusion, then turned back to Andrew, their faces mirroring the same disbelief. "You're all crooked from the top down," I said, shaking my head. "Don't mention my name again. It's filthy." I strode over to Mrs. Carter, giving her a sympathetic pat on the shoulder. "Your husband's illegitimate son is older than your daughter. That must sting. Be careful. One day the father and son might join forces to set you up." With that, I turned and left the room, flanked by my bodyguards, walking out of the hall with my head held high. Just as I was about to leave the estate entirely, a girl dressed inappropriately for the occasion ran after me, spreading her thin arms to block my path. She was trembling from head to toe, clearly terrified. "I want you to apologize to Andrew," she stammered, her voice shaking. "'Twas Sarah." I scrutinized her for a few seconds and then asked, testing her resolve, "Do you think this is touching?" She lifted her chin stubbornly, tears welling in her eyes, and stared at me without responding. I sighed, exasperated. "Why should I apologize? Give me a reason." "No one can choose their origins," she replied, her voice trembling but determined. "You insulted him because of his background. That's your fault. You owe him an apology." "Ridiculous," I said coldly, looking past her at the guests who had started to gather behind me, then fixing her with a glare. "He couldn't choose his origins, sure. But does that mean he can't die?" The moment those words left my mouth, the expressions of everyone around me shifted drastically. Only Mrs. Carter and her daughter revealed a glimmer of satisfaction in their eyes. "How can you be so cruel?" Sarah asked through tears, her voice trembling with emotion. Andrew rushed over to her in just a few quick steps, His eyes filled with a hint of pity. Sarah, stop it. Someone like her could never have empathy. I laughed coldly. Andrew, your very existence is an insult to the rightful wife. If you truly had any empathy, you wouldn't have gone through with this whole family reunion charade. Remember this. Every time I see you, I'll make sure to humiliate you. With a wave of my hand, I signaled my bodyguards to push the two of them aside. I walked a few steps away but suddenly stopped, as if remembering something. Turning back, I smiled mockingly at Joanna. Don't worry, Joanna. You're the legitimate daughter. If you ever run into trouble, you can always come to me for help. Hearing her name, Joanna froze and instinctively glanced at her father before lowering her head slowly. Her mother responded on her behalf. Emily, I know Andrew must have done something to upset you. I'll scold him for it later. Please don't be angry anymore, okay? Sarah cast a worried glance at Andrew, then lowered her head, her shoulders trembling slightly. Andrew seemed to take her reaction as a cue. He stepped closer to me, lowered his gaze and muttered, So I didn't respond to your messages for 2 days. Fine. Sorry. Can you stop making a scene? He had never been prompt in replying to my messages in my previous life. I had grown so used to it that I didn't even mind anymore. I had told myself it was because he had a difficult life and an introverted personality. I thought if I gave more and sacrificed more, it would eventually break down his walls and soften his sharp edges. But all it did was trap me in a toxic cycle, leaving me obsessed with trying to fix him. If you're truly sorry, I said calmly, then kneel and say it. Andrew let out a cold laugh. His voice low and bitter. I knew you'd always look down on me. Are you done playing games? Get lost. Get out of here. Is that your limit? What if I called you a little bastard? Andrew lunged at me, his face contorted with anger, but my bodyguard stepped in and restrained him just in time. Unbothered, I adjusted my coat and strolled away. The Lin family, a prestigious conglomerate with a 100-year history, had fallen because of internal decay, rats eating away at its core. Meanwhile, Andrew's Carter family was nothing more than a nouveau clan that had ridden the wave of a favorable era. In my previous life, I had been blinded by foolish sentiment, giving them the chance to leech off my family's resources. Now that I've returned, everything starts anew. My priority is to prevent the Lin family's decline, and as for Andrew, my revenge will be swift and surgical, using the tools at my disposal. After leaving the Carter estate, I got into my car and began reviewing the video recordings my bodyguards had captured. Miss Lin, they've arrived, my bodyguard in the passenger seat said. I glanced out the window and saw 2 full buses parked not far away. From them emerged a bustling crowd of Andrew's relatives on his mother's side, all smiling brightly as they made their way toward the Carter family's gated community. The sight startled the security guards, who spun in circles nervously before finally remembering to call for backup on their walkie-talkies. It's a pity Andrew's mother had been sent overseas. Otherwise, this would have been even more entertaining. I allowed myself a moment of regret. A few cars parked along the road had reporters inside who couldn't resist the spectacle. Camera lenses began to poke out of the windows, capturing the scene. The sunny weather was perfect for photos. With all this material, I'd make sure to spread the news far and wide, both online and offline. Andrew's mother's extended family, old neighbors, and acquaintances would surely be thrilled to see this. And of course, the rightful wife, sweet-talking uncles and aunts, would need to be informed as well. Some of the uncles and aunts who regularly danced in the neighborhood square also lived nearby. They loved watching drama like this. Sarah had been Andrew's childhood neighbor and classmate. Her family was poor, and she nearly dropped out of middle school due to financial difficulties. It was Andrew's father who sponsored her education, allowing her to continue her studies. During college, Sarah attended a university in the same city as Andrew. The 2 schools were an hour and a half apart by bus. By all accounts, Sarah, coming from a struggling family, should have had no spare money. Yet, during her freshman year, she rented an apartment off campus, presumably to make it easier for Andrew to visit her there. There were plenty of pictures of the two of them online, documenting their time together, from youthful innocence to a more polished, mature image. Their clothes also became noticeably more expensive over the years. After graduating, Sarah joined the Carter family company before Andrew. Using the pretext of repaying her benefactor's kindness, she worked as an administrative assistant and over time became a long-term employee. In addition to her base salary, a separate account would deposit extra money into her account every month. As I reviewed the compiled information on my phone, I organized my thoughts. In college, Andrew and I were in the same department. During the second semester of our sophomore year, I fell for him at first sight during a debate competition. Before confessing my feelings, I asked him and the people around him if he had a girlfriend. Everyone said no. That was when I decided to pursue him. Looking back now, I realized I had been played from the very beginning. Even more ridiculous was how the ever-gracious Joanna had been helping cover for them the entire time. All the while, I thought Andrew was a pitiful child, held back by his parents. In my previous life, I never uncovered any of this, even until my death. Now, this newfound knowledge gave me plenty of material for exposure. A wave of well-edited leaks and revelations followed, meticulously timed. Within just a few days, Andrew's reputation was ruined in the social circles he had worked so hard to impress. Because of his clean-cut, pale and slender appearance, people started calling him Little White-Eyed Wolf. In online comments, some who loved stirring the pot even fabricated outrageous stories about his past. Leaked records showing Andrew's father secretly sending him money over the years also surfaced. Clearly orchestrated by Mrs. Carter, she had been closely following my lead and even amplifying my efforts. After I had someone tip her off that Andrew had planted a mole in their company, her attacks on him became even more ruthless. It seemed Mrs. Carter could tolerate infidelity in marriage, but she would never forgive having what belonged to her children taken away. Andrew should have thought harder about what made him believe he had the right to claim his place in the Carter family. By Friday, I heard that Andrew had moved out of the Carter estate. In front of Mrs. Carter's family and friends, he swore never to use another cent of the Carter family's money. He even relinquished ownership of all properties under his name. On top of that, Sarah had been fired from the company, and Andrew personally escorted her back to her hometown. I was in a fantastic mood. I even felt a sudden urge to invite Joanna out for a meal to ask her for all the juicy details, but I restrained myself. Surprisingly, Andrew couldn't hold back and came to my house instead. It was pouring rain. He stood outside the iron gates of my villa, his face marred with visible scratches and bruises. The butler, wary of letting him in, held firm while Andrew shouted my name over and over, his voice desperate like a starving stray dog. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window on the second floor, holding a steaming cup of coffee, quietly watching him make a scene. It wasn't until he finally noticed me standing there that I nodded for someone to let him in. When we met face to face, he sneezed loudly, completely drenched from head to toe. His eyes and nose were red, making him look pitifully weak. I waited for him to speak, but he just stared at me intently, as if deliberately trying to evoke my sympathy. After a while, I lost patience and let out a heavy sigh. This carpet is quite expensive. If it gets wet, it'll be ruined, you know. Are you going to pay for it if you ruin it? I asked, narrowing my eyes. Andrew widened his eyes in disbelief, his Adam's apple bobbing as he struggled to find his voice. Finally he asked, "Can you tell me why? What exactly happened? I don't want things to end between us so inexplicably." In my past life, I had gone out of my way to treat him well, only for him to respond with curt, stingy words. Now that I was eager to get rid of him, suddenly he had so much to say. Piqued my curiosity. I propped my chin on my hand, watching him with amusement. "How did you convince Sarah to play along? She's been your official girlfriend for years. Even when she saw the two of us getting close, she didn't seem to mind. Did you already promise her she'd be your mistress? Or maybe your side chick?" For years, I had openly pursued Andrew. I never kept it a secret. Even the stray dogs on the streets must have known about it. Yet, Sarah had never once come forward to clarify her relationship with him. It was baffling. Did she think Andrew was a promising investment worth her sacrifice? At the mention of Sarah's name, Andrew quickly lowered his head, avoiding my gaze. His hands, hanging at his sides, clenched into tight fists. After a long silence, he finally seemed to find an excuse and croaked out, "It's not what you think. I've only ever seen Sarah as a sister. You know, I've never had much family." He suddenly took 2 steps closer, his gaze unwavering, firm as he looked at me. "No one's ever respected me. It wasn't until I met you that I found a bit of confidence. Emily, I've realized these past few days that you're all I truly have. Sarah is just my sister." I stared at him coldly. Sister, huh? She must have thought that purple is a very sophisticated color. My expression darkened, and I clenched my fists. "Monroe, there's something filthy here. Help me get rid of it." As soon as I finished speaking, the butler and 6 bodyguards appeared. This had become a habit ever since Andrew had started harassing me. Now, I rarely went anywhere without security. Over the past few days, I'd worked tirelessly to ruin Andrew's reputation, not just out of revenge, but to ignite infighting within the Carter family and bait their competitors into taking advantage of the chaos. Sure enough, rumors and scandals swirled around him, and trouble soon came knocking. Mr. Carter found himself overwhelmed. His wife, too busy fighting for power and moving assets, couldn't help him manage the mess. The company's leadership descended into chaos. Under mounting pressure, Mr. Carter suffered a heart attack and was hospitalized. His wife didn't even visit him, seizing the opportunity of a leaderless family to promote her own relatives to key positions. I had been keeping a close eye on their company. Naturally, I struck while the iron was hot, teaming up with outsiders to carve up their projects, poach their key personnel, and corner them from all sides. My moves were precise, ruthless, and efficient, leaving my father astonished. "Why are you suddenly targeting the Carters so aggressively? Their company isn't that big," he asked one day. Shrugged. "Just because of a breakup. Revenge, you know." He frowned deeply. "That's not right. Relationships are mutual. If it's over, it's over. You need to have the grace to accept the consequences." His words made me smile, but I said nothing. I lacked experience, so it was a perfect opportunity to practice. As their family was in turmoil, it would also prepare me for managing bigger projects in the future. With an air of righteousness, I said, "It's just normal business behavior. Nothing personal, really." My father clearly didn't believe me, but since he had always been dissatisfied with how I had prioritized Andrew over my career, now that I was focusing on business, he fully supported me. "Be steady in your actions and ruthless in correcting mistakes," he advised. As I threw myself into identifying and rooting out the internal issues in our company to prevent future crises, I was so busy that I had almost forgotten Andrew even existed. He showed up with his father to visit mine directly. My father, naturally suspicious, couldn't understand why they would suddenly come knocking. By the time I rushed home from work, the 3 men were sitting in the living room, forcing awkward smiles. The tension in the air was palpable. After a quick greeting, I sat down next to my father, only for him to lean over and quietly ask me, "Are you back with him?" Before I could deny it, Andrew, encouraged by his father's approving nod, suddenly knelt before me on one knee. He pulled a diamond ring from the inner pocket of his suit. "Emily, will you marry me?" My father's face darkened as he set his teacup down with a loud clink, his sharp gaze darting between me and Andrew. The pressure was suffocating. I immediately shook my head at my father, signaling that I had nothing to do with this. I didn't even know Andrew was planning this stunt. My father coughed, then turned to Andrew's father. Andrew's father quickly stood up, forcing a smile as he said, "Andrew and Emily have been in love for many years. Their feelings are deep. There were some misunderstandings before, but now Andrew is about to take over the family business." I promise Emily will never be wronged again. Andrew, his gaze unwavering, added, I know you think I have ulterior motives, but I still want to try. I believe in your judgment, and I trust that you won't abandon me when I need you most. This is the best time to prove our love. His burning gaze made his intentions crystal clear. What he really meant was, you want the best deal, and I'm the most suitable buyer you found so far, isn't that right? Is this about selling yourself for a good price? Yes. Andrew faltered, his expression strained, as if bearing a great burden. I understand you. You value relationships more than anything else. If you're truly sorry, I said calmly, then kneel and say it properly. I want the whole world to see your sincerity. Andrew's jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists at his sides. The storm outside seemed to mirror the tension in the room, thunder rumbling ominously. For a moment, I thought he might actually do it. The proud air of nothing, brought to his knees by a scorned woman. Then his lips curved into something between a sneer and a smile. You think this changes anything, Emily? You think humiliating me in front of a few servants proves your point? His voice was low, dangerous. You of all people should know. Revenge is a dish best served cold. And I've been marinating in mine for 8 years. The words hit me like ice water. In my previous life, I had been so focused on Andrew's cruelty that I'd never stopped to consider his pain. But looking at him now, really looking, I saw something I'd missed before. The way his eyes held a haunted quality, the slight tremor in his hands that wasn't from the cold. You're right, I said, and watched his expression shift to confusion. Revenge is cold. But you know what's colder than revenge? Indifference. I turned away from him, walking toward the grand staircase. You want to know what really killed our relationship, Andrew? It wasn't Sarah. It wasn't your family drama. It was the fact that you never once tried to understand what I went through. While I was sacrificing everything for you, you were too busy playing the tragic hero to notice that I was drowning. Behind me, I heard him take a shaky breath. Sarah killed herself because of you, he said, his voice cracking. I stopped mid-step, then slowly turned around. No, Andrew. Sarah killed herself because she was in love with a boy who was too cowardly to choose between his fantasy and his future. I walked back toward him, stopping just inches from his face. The real tragedy isn't that she died. It's that you let her death destroy the one person who actually wanted to save you. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the room in stark white for a split second. In that brief moment, I saw something break in Andrew's expression. Not defeat, but recognition. You know what the difference is between now and my previous life, I whispered. Back then I would have begged you to stay. I would have groveled and cried and promised to be better. But now, I smiled, and it wasn't kind. Now I finally understand that some people aren't worth saving. Some stories don't need a hero. Some endings are exactly what they deserve. I walked past him toward the front door, pausing only when I reached for my coat. Oh, and Andrew, that project you've been working on. The one you thought would finally impress Daddy Dearest. I glanced over my shoulder. Consider it cancelled. Along with every other deal, every contract, every connection you think you have. As I stepped into the pouring rain, I heard the sound of something shattering behind me. Glass, or maybe just a man's carefully constructed world finally coming apart. Either way, it was music to my ears. The storm was finally breaking, and for the first time in 8 lifetimes, I was dancing in the rain.